When you're planning your work, don't focus only on how to do a thing, but rather why you want to do this thing.
I'm actually investing to save costs in the future, because if I'm not addressing that, it will sooner or later become a problem.
And the recommendations that the architect should make should be based on the return on investment.
Even you're in a phase that you want to move fast and break things. This is completely fine, but with good processes, you can move faster and break at least a little bit less things.
Hi, my name is Marcin and welcome in Product Odyssey, the series where we explore how to build products fundamentally better. Today with me is again Mike and Maciej. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello.
And today we'll be using your experience on more than 150 delivered projects to think about one perspective, and that's the perspective of failure in projects. So we tend to not focus on that. So we assume that we plan for success, but failure is always a part of the each project, and we need to account for that. Today, let's focus on very specific failure. So this is the area where we want to tackle most common and obvious areas of failure or the risks in projects that CEO or CTO is not thinking too often on that, but from our experience, that's a risk area. And let's find out if we have any insights or takeaways for CEOs and CTOs to take it from here. So let's start. Who wants to take the first area?
Mm-hmm. So I would say that maybe one of the failures that is maybe not as common, but it's extremely dangerous is not being aligned with developing what you need. And that's actually not focusing on the impact of your project, just building the project, providing the output, but not actually impacting the business benefit. So
yeah, I think it's difficult to do because while our actions can actually create some kind of output. Our efforts are actually outputting some kind of results. It's really hard to align those outputs with an outcome that we as a business want to achieve, and as a result, to provide the impact that we want to make on the world. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you always need to manage this in a correct way, and it's not always possible to measure the impact directly. There are cases that you can do this, but I know a few projects that had real issues because they were focusing on actually generating the code, on generating even new features, but the problem was that the vision wasn't really there. That the vision was being built while the project was already being developed. And that's something where, of course, you don't want to have a waterfall approach where you plan everything and then just code it. But on the other hand, you also need planning. And to me, it's actually surprising how often you treat agile as an excuse to not to plan at all.
So let's just stop here to just help me understand if the problem area is aligned between us. So the problem is thinking about sub-optimizing a little bit, right? So thinking about how fast I'm delivering, how fast I should be developing this functionality, rather than thinking about what is the impact in the end, right?
Yes, exactly. It's much easier to measure the output rather than the outcome or impact. So that's the trap that it's very easy to fall into. And once you start doing this, you have additional pull because then maybe you already have a team that is waiting for new features because you already engaged them, but your product manager doesn't have yet all the answers, mm-hmm. and he needs to build something quickly. So it's sometimes a trap that you fall into deeper and deeper, and you have less and less time to really actually think about, okay, how does this impact the project?
Yeah, it's also really easy to fall into this trap because we have our effort under control, right? We can try more. We got our outputs of our work under control because we can deliver something different. So this is something that we have direct direct control over. But later down the road on the value stream, where we were talking about the outcomes of our output or the impact in the end, this is where we don't have like direct control over it.
Yeah, and very often you think that it's actually even impossible to measure the impact, but also we know cases where it actually is possible. You can measure things like, how much the new features that you built or, new actions that you took influence the growth of the company. And you can have a goal for everyone to see that maybe you want to grow 3 times per year. And that's okay to, translate those goals to the team and to build the actual additional actions that are easier to control for people, easier to influence for people out of this main goal. And the biggest mistake you can make is not to convey this. Very often you can convey the impact that you're aiming for. You can convey how it links to, the outcome, how it conveys to outputs, how you can actually try to achieve it. Sometimes there is a situation where you cannot really measure the impact, then you can again measure the outcome and go a little bit lower in this hierarchy.
But isn't this the reason for why project can fail? Because they are focusing too much on the output, too much on the efforts actually being made, and not on the final impact that they want to achieve. Because it's harder, right?
I need to stop you here because we are mentioning impact goals, and this is very generic, right? Just to stay on the really core of the problem. Can you define what's an example of the situation, what we are exactly talking about? So what is the mistake that you can have in form of functionality or approach or the team structure?
Yeah, so let's say that we want to develop some kind of new feature that we want to add to our product, right? Our effort in this case would be to write some code, to write some documentation, to maybe design the product, right? Those are our efforts. Outputs of those efforts are, the code written, right? Some kind of like a new feature implemented into it, some kind of other additional integration, maybe some design docs, maybe some feedback that we gathered through those efforts, right? So this is the thing that we have direct control over. But the next step, the outcome, is something that is less tangible. The outcome in this case is a change in behavior of our clients that we want to affect by this new feature. And as a result, they will come to us. They will pay us more for our product. They will recommend our product to other people. They will come to us product. And this is the impact, the revenue stream in this case, that we are targeting in the end, right?
Maybe I can give an actual example because let's take a simple project that we're working on, and that's our uniforms package. That's like an open source code that we were building some time ago. And the goal was to have, a lot of downloads, and we were aiming for a few million downloads, right? So that was the impact that we were aiming for. And that's something that we were conveying to, the team that was working on the application, on the solution dev tool, that this is something that we want to achieve. But then the outcome that we wanted to get out of the tasks that we were performing was, so we want this package to be as friendly to developers as possible, as easy to use, and we were aiming for the developers to be really, have a great experience and want to recommend the package further. So that was the outcome that we were aiming for. But then you can translate it to output, which is, we need a good documentation. We need a good quality of the code, of the architecture. And this is something that if you don't convey this altogether, you very easily can get some results that won't give you the final impact.
Okay, so I'm trying to deconstruct that, and I'm seeing 3 areas that you're mentioning. One is that it's not about, if we are developing a feature, it's not about describing what the feature do, like specifically that this is step A, B, and C, but understanding why we are building it at all. So why we need this feature, not the other feature, or why we need this feature, not done it in a different way, right? So that's one. So I need to have a goal for the feature and the impact. Right.
I look at it even differently. Like, very often if you have great team on your project, once they know the impact that you're aiming for, they can come up with ideas that you didn't think about. and they can find,
That was exactly like my second point, right? So this is the one, because you cannot do it the second step without the first one. So if you don't know why the feature you are developing, you cannot have an assumption that the team will actually help you to define it, how to do it better, how to achieve this impact, and how to advise you to do it this or other way around. So this is the second thing, that you need to have the team understand what is the business goal for this, or what is the vision behind it. So they will not be just the respondent of this is the feature to do next, right? So team involved there. And then this all boils down to the third question, and this is like asking and having one team concept. So it's not the probably only the owner to define like this is the feature A, B, and C to do it, but it's shared journey. And in most of the cases we do experiments, so we don't know what will be the impact, as you have mentioned. And we need to focus on experimenting, and experimentation assumes that everybody participates and have some feedback around it, right? So those 3 points I see under this one failure that we see very often, and the one risk area.
Yes, exactly. And it's also a little bit complex because, you can look at your project and your product, your business through the lens, for example, of business model canvas. You don't know everything. You find things in the middle of development. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are other ways of looking at it, but then you're in this virtual vortex where you need to find things on the go, right? And you don't always have the right impact, or the impact changes with time. So it's about managing how you communicate this. But the biggest mistake and the biggest failure, I would say, based on our experience, is not trying to do this at all. And
right, yeah.
That's, you are destined to, or you have very, very little chance of success.
Right. Don't ask why we do it. Don't just do it. Just do it efficiently. Just deliver functionality. That's the common mistake, right? We need to. I know how to do it, and maybe it's obvious for me, but it's not obvious for the development team, and therefore they are missing this critical feedback and maybe good ideas coming from the team, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any last takeaways? So closing that. If I see this as a main risk area, if I see that this is the thing to focus on, 1 or 2 points what I should immediately do in case of my running projects or current project that I have.
Mm-hmm. That depends quite a lot on the project, I would say. And one thing is, of course, you need to know what you're aiming for, what you don't know, what you know, what are your goals. How you need to look at your project through some lens. It can be business model canvas, it can be something else, but look at it and plan based on this, and then convey this well to the team. And it's, of course, an advantage to get feedback from them and actually change things while you hear, okay, maybe technology cannot achieve this, or maybe we have some critical feedback. So then, using the whole team to actually give you correct feedback in their fields of expertise and adjusting your plan, that's I would say the second thing. And the third thing is actually measure it. And, whenever you can, either measure impact or measure the outcome. And then based on this, adjust your actions if you can.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
One more insight could be that when you're planning your work, don't focus only on how to do a thing, but rather why you want to do this thing, right? Keep this why in the back of your head. Keep this in your backlog, in your user stories, why you're actually doing this. Because most often than not, you may not need to do it to achieve the reason behind it, right? And this is also an advantage.
Yeah, from my side, I would say that it's very close to what is already known on the market. So if you look on the customer development approach or lean startup, it's more than common, and we need to learn from that because we see that it's not implemented. And those are those 3 points which basically connect to yours, and that's our learning. Close the loop. So I mean that if you develop the functionality, involve the team in understanding that delivering functionality is not the end. You need to measure what is happening after that. Does it work? It has some goal. So you need to measure, and then based on that, make a correction and plan the new functionality. That means also that it's a hypothesis-driven development. So everything that we do is not defined and not finite. So you need to assume that it's a hypothesis that it will be used in this way, it will be used in that way. So if this is a hypothesis, it's an experiment. So learn, fail. And unfortunately, that means that team needs to be prepared that you will scratch sometimes functionality that you deliver, right? And they need to be aware of that. But it's closing the loop, hypothesis-driven development, and team involvement in this experiment and scratching if it's needed. That closed this one area. Let's move to the other. Who wants to go with the next one?
I think the next typical failure in products could be not putting enough attention to DevOps.
Right, yes. Yeah.
And by this, I don't mean like the classical DevOps like CI/CD pipeline or automatic tests. Those, of course, are also very important. But I think if you miss the actual reason why you use DevOps and how this is the lifeblood of your product, depending on what your product is. But quite often, for example, for software as a service platforms, those processes involved in all of the picture that we broadly called DevOps is really crucial, and missing important pieces over there could actually cost you sometimes even your product, right? In a very in rare cases. So in this case, by DevOps, I mean something broader even. So even like a business continuity management thing, right? So DevOps doesn't have to be only being able to ship faster some product, to automate some of the tasks that otherwise people need to do manually. This is, of course, also important, but good DevOps practices would enable you to actually either if you're a pre-product market fit company, then I would allow you to move faster and achieve the product market fit and do it before your competition, do it better, iterate quickly. So this is something that good DevOps practices could enable you. And in case you're a more mature company, you already find your product market fit, then you're on a market, you're actually gaining some income from the product. You need to make sure that you're being able to continue doing it, right? So in case of some downtime, in case of some failure, you need to have processes that would allow you to get up quickly. You need to be completely aware how to behave when this kind of situation will happen, because they will happen. And this is like a life cycle of a product, but not being able to get up after such thing happens, this is where actual problems arise.
So it seems that, just to reformulate the problem, right? The problem, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, we see far too often situations that for some of the clients that we have, if they are in the startup phase or the beginning of the journey, they think that it will be later the stage where I need to think about those processes which every huge organization has, right? So crisis management, or maybe the business continuity management, or thinking about optimization of the infrastructure, right? If we'll have a success, I will think about that. But then there is a gap, because then it hits you and it's too late. And then you also mentioned the perspective of the pre-market fit and post-market fit. So even if I'm in the production already, I don't have a huge number of users, so I'm not thinking about that. But what you're saying is the problem is it's always too late when it hits you. So you need to be prepared of that. Do you want to extend on that problem a little bit?
Yeah, I would say that it's very common that on almost any project that we work on, there is a situation that DevOps is omitted at some point at a certain level. And very often you think about DevOps when you're launching live, or when you scale for a big event. But then very often you also put other priorities first. And it's hard to convince the founder, or hard to convince the investor in the business to also invest in DevOps planning even on a regular basis. And that's where you get the biggest return on investment, because you don't need to do everything at once. You don't need to have, a DevOps team that is looking for a project and optimizing things at first. You only need a plan to act whenever either you grow faster than you thought you will, or whenever you hit certain problems that you can actually predict. And on the minimal level, you need to know whom to call to solve your problem. And whenever you have this plan, you can actually also, even if something happens, you get a good crisis management. You know what to tell to, your users, to your investors, when things will happen, what you can do as a next step. And without this, it's a chaos. And of course, you very often optimize other things, and then you hit this chaos up to the level that, we even have our own general procedures for acting in those situations. But that's just showing how often you don't think about this, because you think, okay, I have another priority, and you delay this by a month, by 3 months, and then something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for many companies, this is like a nice to have kind of processes, and nobody is opposing those ideas, right? So this is nothing new to many of people listening to this podcast. So this is something borderline obvious, but still, this is the mistake that we've seen once after another. People do not put enough attention into it, and this came back to haunt them, right? So even you're in a phase that you want to move fast and break things, this is completely fine. But with good processes, you can move faster and break at least a little bit less things in the process. And even if you're moving fast and breaking things, there is always something that could be done a little bit better. Basically, you got a leverage here that you can. Not enough companies are using this leverage enough.
Yeah, I guess there is also from experience this kind of approach that we think it's a one-time activity. So if we are selling that, you need to think about DevOps. They are thinking, okay, I need to invest. And first of all, disclaimer, we see that it's a wrong way of thinking, right? It's not adding a cost. I don't want to add a new cost of DevOps just for the sake of that's needed. I'm actually investing to save costs in the future, because if I'm not addressing that, it will sooner or later become a problem. But the misconception is it's a one-time activity, so I need to plan it somewhere, and it's so huge that I will plan it probably always later. But in the same moment, we have a very good example of how to deal with those kind of like lots of things to implement issue and how to prioritize that. And that's a product backlog. And we're pretty good in prioritizing backlog elements in case of ROI or in the case of the urgency. And here, probably it is the same thing, that maybe it's a word of approaching it in a way that it's an element on your product backlog. You need to be aware of that at least. You don't need to implement it all.
This is more like a process thing than one-time thing to need to be done, right?
Because and that's the second thing that is incremental.
As a reminder, by DevOps, I don't mean like setting up a CI/CD or having like continuous deployment. This is part of it, but adopting like a DevOps or DevSecOps even mindset is changing how you behave, how your development process behaves, and helps you to be aware of the issues that needs to be taken into consideration that otherwise may slip. And
right, so it's incremental approach. It also touches the, for example, cost of infrastructure, right? And it's not a one-time activity again. It's not that I need to sit down and decide it will be on AWS and that will be my server. It will be basically my setup. But it's rather around have a time and focus on when to think about that and define when I need to make a decision or what is an incremental step I need to do. I can prioritize that, and I can decide if this is a one-way decision or one-way door, as Jeff Bezos is saying, or two-way door, right? Decision. So can I change that in the future? If yes, maybe you don't need to focus right now, and you can actually make a decision, try it out, and move back if it's not working for you. If it's a one-way door, I cannot move back. Let's sit down and focus on that. But the timing is critical, right? I need to timing and awareness, right? I need to know about that. Don't delay it. And then I need to, if we are implementing that, I need to know that I can do it incrementally, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about at least having time to plan. And that's easy, that's cheap. And then when things happen, you can actually, you also have, some, if you set up your plan right, you have some time to react. And if you know how to react, then you can do this much more cheaply.
And this is also related to risk management, right? So many companies take this into account only from the risk management part. And this is also fine. This is how many companies are managing risk.
Yeah, it's a lot about the return on investment and preparing the plan that will give you the return in the given stage that you're at.
Yeah.
Okay, that means that we have landed on some insights. From one thing that I remember also from the experience, it's also the area where this incremental approach comes in that you have mentioned. That people think that it's a huge effort in most of the cases. In the beginning of the project, it can be very simple stuff like not even hiring a one FTE, but actually hiring, maybe not even hiring, but giving somebody a task to assess that and to think about the area. If that takes more time, then build up on this. You can add more FTE, you can probably build a team if there is a need, but definitely need to have a plan for that and need to think about that.
Yeah, you can also, if you don't have expertise, again, in your team, it's easy to get expertise from outside of your team to at least verify your plan and then have, scale your approach. So you don't need to have, a DevOps focused company right away helping you. You don't need to have your own team right away, but it's good to know, which tool it's worth to use and how quickly you can do this.
Okay. It's always beneficial to have some set of eyes from outside looking at your processes and taking and maybe recommending you things that you just miss, right? Even you have a complete platform team working daily on this on those issues. Still, I think it's beneficial to be have an open culture when people can contribute to the broad spectrum of those.
Okay, that's the topic. Just to summarize, any short takeaway, like summary of what those points are from your side. What should I do if I want to focus more? Depends on what kind of stage I am in the development. What should I focus on regarding DevOps infrastructure and business continuity management process?
Yeah, I think you should sit right now and rethink whether you're putting enough attention into the broad DevOps idea in your product, right? Whether this is something that many developers or other people mentioning to you that needs to be improved in this and this area, and you just shove this away because there is no enough time for it right now, or are people happy with their developer experience? Are the processes going smoothly? Are we being to deploy on time? If so, then yeah, congratulations, you're in the right place where you should be. If you got all your procedures, if you sleep at night, if you do a deployment on Friday evening and you sleep this night well, then yes, this means that everything is fine. But in any cases where this is not true, then maybe it's a good moment to rethink how you can improve this, how you can put this into the core philosophy of methodology of how your teams work, and maybe you can be a little bit better. Maybe you can achieve a little bit more next time.
Okay, good hint.
I would say that first thing you should check is whether maybe you're not already in the place where adding some more business continuity management procedures or DevOps could actually help you. For example, if you spend a lot of time and money on on-call support and on servicing your project, that's probably already too late. You should probably include some automation already before. And on the other hand, use your backlog. Like you said, it's something that you can plan ahead. You can actually delegate a person to have an ownership on the DevOps and monitor this on a regular basis, or maybe do it yourself, but also plan this in your schedule, in your backlog, in how you approach the project.
Okay, you've actually stolen my idea and as a takeaway, because yeah, that's a mix of that. So be aware of this and be aware of those processes that you need to implement them sooner or later. So plan for a success, and if you want to plan it, then it needs to be a part of the backlog. So treat that as a part of a backlog among the functionalities and epics that you want to implement, and treat that as an investment, right? So there is a reward connected to that, there is a cost connected, but there is also return on investment. And it's easy to do that and treat that against the risks. So you will know what and when to do it, or what kind of risk you take if you don't do it. That's definitely that would be my takeaway. So we've talked about two main issues. I guess we have a time for the at least 1/3 most common issue that we have seen. Anybody wants to take that?
Mm-hmm. So I think that would be management of technological debt.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's a broad topic, but in general, not managing this consciously, that's, I think, the common issue. And actually, there are a lot of articles that say that complexity of the project is actually something that kills almost half of the projects. I'm not sure if it's true, but it's definitely something that at least requires you to invest quite a lot in rewrite, in analyzing how you actually structure the project. And if you manage this right, you can actually very often avoid this.
Okay, but then we need to define this as a problem, right? Technical debt is technical debt. We know that the complexity grows and technical debt accumulate. What is the example of the problem connected to that?
Well, you'll see when you get problems with technical debt, people will tell you about this like all the time that are going to work with it.
If I'm asking developers, they will always say that we need to deal with technical debt.
Yeah, but that's true that there is always too much technical debt and they always want to try new thing and rewrite everything. So yeah, this is one factor that you can look at, but it's not the most crucial one. I think the general velocity and other metrics like DORA that you can implement to see how much you are being able to develop, to deliver, value stream management methodologies that allow you to measure actual, like we discussed, impact, or in this case, even measuring the output. This would help you to see when things start to fall apart. And maybe one of the reasons for this could be technical debt.
I think that it's good to also maybe explain a few most common examples that we see. And one case I would say is that you start with a prototype that had to be there for maybe a month or 3 months, and then your goal was to rewrite it. But there was never time to actually rewrite it. So then you extend this some more, and you never actually plan, okay, right now, this is the time to make this into an application that will last for longer. That will be your production application, and that's something that happens very often. And sometimes it's actually even a good approach to build something quickly, then modify it. But if you don't plan how to adjust this, then your time to deliver new features will be longer and longer and less efficient. That's one aspect. Then another one is that sometimes technology changes and your technology is already getting older in some part of your application. And very often that's okay. You can have some applications that last 10, 20 years without the need to change the technology. But on the other hand, from time to time, there are situations where something new appears that really speeds up the development of your application. And we had situations where in extreme cases, we were delaying the rewrite of part of the application. And in the end, after a few years of development, when we actually did a rewrite, it ended up being, 2 months of work in extreme cases. And it actually sped up the development 3 times. And, you always need to make this decision through, correct information, correct analysis. But sometimes you omit this analysis. And here I think that you should always look at it as, checking what's your return on investment on certain actions and not preparing a plan for how to manage technological debt, how to monitor it, how to, audit your application internally, for example, from time to time. That's the main mistake that very often happens. You just don't prioritize it.
That's interesting because then I understand it from the perspective of technical debt is common known area, right? So we're not talking about something from as a rocket science here. Everybody knows about technical debt, but what kind of lenses you're putting on that is that it's not that you need to be aware and deal with that, but you can deal with that with the different strategies. For example, I can assume that I will do the rewrite in 3 months and there will be a time on that. If I'm planning for that, that's okay. But ignoring for sure, it's a bad practice. So we'll deal with that sometime. And
I can even be like a devil's advocate, but technical debt is actually a good thing sometimes if managed correctly, right? So let's assume opposite situation where we got a product that is before product market fit, and we're doing everything like top-notch quality, right? We're not
right,
moving
yeah.
too fast and not breaking things, and everything got completely 100% test coverage, and everything is fine. Then we're not moving as fast forward as we could be moving to this goal, right? So we want to have some kind of this is the goal of debts and loans in general, right? We take loans to achieve some result faster than we would not be able to do it otherwise, right?
I always use this kind of example that if you are training, you are actually creating a fatigue and you are destroying physically training, you are destroying your muscles, right? But then if you manage that, that's a goal for getting better, but you need to manage the level of basically fatigue. And that's sometimes how I compare it to technical debt. Technical debt will be always there, but you need to measure that and deal with that effectively. So it will not kill you with the speed. Sometimes maybe it's a goal. I can go, as you're mentioning, I'm assuming we need to do as fast as we can and develop that. And it's a good thing that technical debt is there. I'm not getting that perfect. But then I need to understand that it will either need to deal with that later with doing rewrite, or I will have extensive time in that, right?
Yeah,
but monitor it at least.
Like any debt, you have some interest on it, and
exactly,
you need to just manage it.
Right.
And here I think that one aspect that is often overlooked or not that visible is that monitoring technical debt is not that hard, actually. You can very often, audit your project within 10 hours, maybe 20 hours, have an architect look at the project and monitor how things look. And then you don't need to actually follow up on any recommendations that are there. And the recommendations that the architect should make should be based on the return on investment. And if you see, okay, you're doing an audit, that's something that, on a few projects we're doing on a regular basis. Not on every project, and that's very often due to the approach of the founder or investors, and sometimes that's a problem. But maybe let's not go into this.
Right. Yeah.
So you can, invest, for example, 10 hours every 3 months or every 6 months, and then get meaningful remarks on what you can do to actually get a good return on investment, to actually put in 20 hours or 30 hours for refactoring to actually get back 20 hours per month, for example.
Yeah, we have a great example with the current customer that we have where we're actually agreeing, or the client agreed, and this was even his suggestion, that we'll have something which we're calling Technical Fridays, right? So basically a time in a cadence of sprint, or if we're not working in sprints, in some time that we spend totally on improvements of the code processes and the whole project. So allocating a time and agreeing that this is a part of that. And of course, then you can measure the impact of the results, right?
Yeah, here I'll take also the role of the devil's advocate, because in this project, yes, it makes sense. But also on many projects, it's premature to actually, have one day for this, and you can actually increase this time or decrease this time based on the need.
Yeah, of course, this is a slider again, right? So I'm seeing that as this kind of like use it as much as you need, like with the fatigue in the training. So if it's critical for you and it's an ongoing project and you move very fast in creating a huge technical debt, but you want to stay on the same speed, then this amount of time experiment, if this is more needed or less, invest on that.
Yeah, you can put different efforts on the topic, but the mistake that is actually could be deadly is when you don't think about this at all, right? When you just skip this, it's not on your fault at all. You're not planning. You
don't see the spider, right? It's hidden, so it's more dangerous.
And when you're already handling the technical debt, we have also one pattern that is an anti-pattern to approach it, because it doesn't happen often, but sometimes it happens that you want to actually address the technical debt. So you actually dedicate a team to maybe build part of your application completely differently, to improve the architecture, learn on the lessons learned. And very often you get other people than the ones that were developing the application to actually build it. And then this is the approach where you don't use the knowledge of people that already had a chance to check what are your business issues that resulted in the application that is being built in a way that it is. And very often you spend too much time on building this new architecture. If you start talking with the team that built the application later, that's half of the problem, because then you'll know, okay, we need to readjust. But sometimes you actually build this as maybe a part of your application that you want to extend further to the whole code. And very often too late, you get to know, okay, actually it doesn't work. Actually, there was certain logic behind how the application was built in the first place. And involving people that were building the application, getting maybe some expertise from outside if you see that the current team cannot handle the technical depth, but also understanding their view and getting their knowledge. That's something that can give you the result of handling this well.
Mm-hmm. That's a good perspective. Any comment on that?
No, I completely agree.
I would actually not be myself if I would not cover also the topic of not the obvious, or not the non-obvious things, but the obvious one. And that's also the fact that if we're talking about technical depth, we are also talking about knowledge silos and the areas, not only the fact that it's complex, solution is complex because we are adding to that, but sometimes it's complex because we unintentionally has done it in this way. And therefore there are obvious solutions for that we need to focus on that. And this is like a peer review and basically another developer checking my code or doing reviews and thinking about having tech leads leading the development and trying to review if the quality and skill set applied is a correct one, right? So just to cover also the basics that it's not only that. And of course from that, the pattern will be that it's a thing that we need to focus on. If we move fast, it easy is to agree that one developer, one person is doing one area because he's an expert, he's moving fast there. So let's give it to him and he will be this kind of like a person expert from it. But then leaving him there, it's one, knowledge will actually, it will be knowledge silo. And second of all, there will be nobody who can actually effectively even review him, right? Because then I don't understand your area, so maybe I will not touch it, right? So just to add it to the picture, as probably it's obvious, right?
Yeah, and there are ways to mitigate this, but as always, you need to plan this. You need to have a system in place.
Yeah, for this is actually I'm feeling pretty secured on the projects that we see and the clients, because there is a clear thing how to, maybe there is no like a one metric that you measure, as you have mentioned. Technical depth, but with applying common sense, so measuring the quality, number of defects, speed of development, measuring knowledge gap, or trying to do a good code review will give you good enough indicators if you are having this high technical depth or low technical depth level. It will be not one metric, but at least we have a safety net that I know that this is a problem right now or it's not a problem, right? So at least there are metrics, and that would be my takeaway to at least to have that, right?
Yeah, because you can't measure technical depth directly,
Yes.
because it's not a thing related to code. It's not like the code is written in a bad way or it's not nice, or of course you can have like flame wars between like tabs and spaces and everything like this, but it's not trivial as this. Like the technical depth is more like a process kind of thing, rather than code related strictly to issue.
Alternative cost. It's not a cost per se, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as well. But like you mentioned, like information silo, like lack of documentation, lack of effort to do the documentation. All of those things contribute to technical depth, and you cannot measure them by looking at code itself, right? So you need to basically look at the process, how people behave, how the interaction, like the code review, all of those stuff. It helps you to mitigate it and.
Exactly, and this is basically as the same as a story like cutting the trees, and I never have a time to sharpen my axe, so I'm cutting that. This is always the question of how much I want to maintain and do this kind of maintenance to move faster later, so invest right now, versus how much time I will spend on running. Okay, so let's try to put it as to take this kind of pill from this. So one short summary of takeaways, what I should focus on regarding technical depth and technical complexity as the area of risk.
So I would say that, again, it's worth to have a correct structure for the phase that you're in. And at first, you don't need to focus on it a lot. Maybe you don't need to focus on it at all for a few months, depending on your goals. But with time, you should build additional structures or additional tools to handle this, or additional roles that focus on this. And auditing projects from time to time, that's a good approach. Then planning, optimization, and handling technical debt based on the return on investment, that's critical. You, in my opinion, should never do things without having this overview. Okay, like what will be the result? How much it will cost you to do the optimization? What will be the gain from this? And then I would say that the most important part after that is to actually, plan this restructurization. If you're doing a bigger restructurization, plan this with the team, getting all the knowledge you can get from inside, or if you don't have this knowledge inside the team, also from outside, but with the use of your internal knowledge as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so my takeaways would be that tech debt could be a good thing, or at least could be not a bad thing if managed correctly. But of course, this depends on the phase of the project, like you mentioned, right? And the tech debt creep will always happen. So this is like a natural process of software development, and this will happen depending on the people you get on the project, their experience, how they behave. It could happen quicker or in a more slowly fashion, but it will happen for sure. And the complexity needs to go somewhere anyway, right? So even if you try to put it under a rag, you cannot basically, unless you're doing a really trivial product, then you have to manage it. And as a result, there will be this kind of like complexity creep alongside the technical debt creep, and you need to have procedures in place to manage it.
Yeah, the complexity is inevitable, and then we need to assume it will be always there. So that from my side, it would be, first of all, measure that and accept that it will be always there, but don't accept any level that you have. So if you see that as a problem, if you prioritize the speed at a given time of the product cycle, then you can actually ignore that or plan for the later that you will rewrite. If you are in the continuous cycle and you are mature enough, you for sure need to focus on that to address it regularly, because it will grow and blow out somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
so,
and like Lannisters, you need to always pay your debts.
Exactly, yeah, pay your debts always. That was closing the third point that we have discussed, and I guess that's all that we can get into this episode. I guess that it was very insightful, and we'll probably continue on the further approach with discussing more risks that we have seen and failures that we have seen in our projects. But for this episode, that's enough. And thank you for watching. And if you want to provide any comments from your side, any feedback around that, or you don't agree with those points or those solutions, feel free to reach to us, write us a comment, and never forget to subscribe to learn about new episodes. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next episode.